So, in these past couple of weeks, a lot of things have definitely changed for a lot of people throughout the world, and definitely in the United States as well. Where I live in New York City, we've been hit pretty hard. I haven't been able to go outside, obviously, in like past week and a half. The last time that I went to my job, I work at Target now, was like, I think last Saturday, and ever since I stopped going to work, this has only been getting worse and worse and worse and progressively worse. The cases of coronavirus keep skyrocketing, and this has kind of led me to believe that we're going to reach a peak at some point, but we don't really know how big that peak is going to be. And what I wanted to make this video about is where this came from, and I'm sure you all know where this came from, but how this came to be a thing and why this blew up to such the proportion that it did. What a lot of people aren't talking about is, yeah, this is China's fault. And the reason why has nothing to do with racial prejudice or anything like that. The only thing that it has to do with is the cold hard facts. And the fact is that in China, they have a bunch of these things called wet markets where they sell exotic animals that they chop up and do all sorts of inhumane things to. And not only is it inhumane, but it also is the cause of the spread of disease. And as if this wasn't bad enough, when this disease came about and it started to impact people in China, what the government did there was they ignored the whole outbreak for well over a month. And even when doctors in China that spoke out against the virus before it was actually given a name, these doctors, what happened to them was basically the government was like, hey, don't spread panic about the virus, and that's their official backing. But I don't think that they were trying to avert panic. What they were trying to do was suppress the virus. Now what we have is a global catastrophe. China's official numbers is 80,000, but honestly, if you believe that, that's quite foolish. 80,000 people in China, really? It doesn't matter how authoritarian their government is. Without a doubt, it's more than 80,000 people. That's what they want you to believe, but the numbers are so much higher. They didn't take care of their outbreak properly. They suppressed this doctor, and by the way, that doctor, who was 29 years old, he passed away. Like, he died from this virus, and I don't think he had any pre-existing conditions, so it might be a little extreme to say this, but did he really die from the virus? I mean, honestly, this is China that we're talking about, so they probably killed the dude. This is the same country that banned Winnie the Pooh because too many people in China were saying that it looked like the president of China. That kind of country isn't a country that I want to ever step foot in, and I'm sorry if any viewers are Chinese or have relatives that live in China or know anybody that lives in China, but the fact is that China for years has been morally behind in a lot of things, and the way that they run their society, it's not humane whatsoever. And unfortunately, the way that China goes about business has impacted the entire world. And of course, they're not gonna take responsibility. Of course, nothing will come from this video, but I just want to put my voice out there and say I'm not going to turn the other cheek to what China's done. And of course this video might not even get a lot of views, but I do want to pass on this message to whatever people that might view this video. Do the research. This is completely China's fault, and while I am no Republican, when Donald Trump called this a Chinese virus, I didn't disagree with him whatsoever. It's not racism. It's just the fact that China ignored an outbreak, and then they did this whole lockdown thing, but the reason why they did the lockdowns was because it was becoming too big for them to ignore. So, like I said, when you see that number that says 80,000 on TV, that's not the real number. I don't believe it for a second. China's committed all sorts of atrocities throughout recent history. Tiananmen Square, the persecution of the Uyghurs. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but basically the Uyghurs are Muslims that live in China, and because China is very anti-religion, these Uyghur people got persecuted and put into camps where they were basically corrected on the way that they should behave in Chinese society. A lot of these people were married off to Chinese men, and if you look at the Chinese media, what they've said is that these people have gone to the camps by choice or something, or some really propaganda type stuff. I put an image of their silly little article, and it just doesn't make any sense. It's exactly what you might expect from a communist country that dictates every form of media that comes in and out of there. And there's even some people that are suing China for causing the outbreak, basically. And are they gonna win? Of course no. They're not gonna win, because China is one of the biggest economies on the planet. It's just kind of messed up how it's their fault for this outbreak, and nothing's gonna come from it. Once everybody recovers, once the world recovers from this, China's gonna go back to their business, doing what it is that they do. They're gonna still engage in child labor. They're still gonna have this inhumane, authoritarian society that just doesn't work for the people, but it works for whoever is running that country. Honestly, I don't even know how China runs 1 billion people in a communist society. I guess everybody's just brainwashed to think that this is a system that works. The founder of the Chinese government that we know is Mao Zedong. He had a cult of personality, and what he basically did was he convinced the entire youth at the time that there was a big societal problem. That's usually how it is with these societies. That's how they start revolutions. They have some guy with a cult of personality, like Hitler. I know he wasn't a communist, but he was another authoritarian. Stalin, he had that cult of personality, and so did Mao Zedong, but Mao Zedong had such a bad cult of personality that he convinced an entire generation of youth to go and slaughter teachers, nurses, doctors, and anybody in a middle-class position, because he felt like he wanted to control everything, and that's just not okay. What does this have to do with the coronavirus? Not much, but this is sort of the foundation as to why China is the way that it is, and how this was able to happen. Sure, an outbreak could happen anywhere at any time, but under the conditions that China was, and I'm gonna say something that's a little bit messed up, especially for a time like this, but whenever I played Plague.Inc., I don't know if you guys know what that game is, but it's basically a game where you manufacture a disease, and the basic goal is to spread it throughout the world and kill everybody. I would always start it in China, and the reason why is because China can't really defend against diseases when most of its population is poor, impoverished, and just under a form of government that doesn't really work. And does that make the United States a great place, a great government? Well, I mean, it doesn't make it perfect, but it's definitely better than an authoritarian state in which people can sell exotic animals, slit their throats in a public marketplace as they please, and also engage in things like child labor. The United States abolished that like a good 90, 80 years ago. So yeah, I honestly think that the coronavirus is entirely China's fault, and in the future, what the entire world should do is try to figure out a way to prevent such a thing from happening in the future. With the way that China is covering up shit, I don't really know how that would be done. So thanks for listening to my rant and my discussion about the coronavirus, and I hope you all stay safe, especially those of you who live in states with high infection rates like New York. Please stay safe, wash your hands, try not to go outside, and if you do go outside, wear some gloves, maybe a mask if you feel like that's necessary. So yeah, peace out everybody. Stay awesome.